Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining the Derek Arden live chat show. That's what I'm calling it now because it seems to work better on the web. Just want to tell you a couple of things about Zoom, but the first thing I want to say is the Zoom servers are really overloaded. This is going backwards and forwards between San Francisco and the UK. It's also using broadband at the moment, which is totally overloaded because there's so many people working from home. The first little trick I want to show you, which is great fun, and you can do this, totally useless if you're in a meeting, but good fun. So if you go down to stop video, you can choose the virtual background and suddenly I can be in San Francisco. Has no relevance at all, apart from it's a bit of fun if you're having a meeting with a friend of yours. On the other hand, you can be in Chateau Margaux, my favorite wine in the Bordeaux region, just off the Gironde estuary, if I got my French right, and Jerry DeLacy's on a beach in California somewhere, or on a line. So I'm going to take that off now and back to me. And the problem with that, guys, is what it does, and Godfrey and I were having a chat earlier when we were rehearsing this, it slows down all the waving and messes it up, unless you've got a proper green screen, which I've got over there, but I don't quite know. I haven't figured out quite how to work it yet. So the recordings are going. Second tip I wanted to give you, for those of you who are working at home, is speed reading. I came across speed reading about 20 years ago, and there's actually something called photo reading as well, where you almost turn over every page in a book and pick up what's on there, and therefore I've just muted everybody. If I hesitated there, I just muted everybody because there was a bit of clicking in the background. That's what I did there. Yeah, so speed reading, you can actually increase the speed you read at by either hovering the mouse over what you're reading and doing that very quickly, or you can use your finger to go over the words like we were taught at school when we learned to read. That will increase your speed reading by about 100%. Then once you get used to that, you can run your hand down the words because the eyes are so clever and they've got peripheral vision linked to the brain. You can read it almost going down like that. And that's what I tend to do. And my speed reading is 701 words a minute. The average person is 250 words a minute. You can test this. And if you want to, write this down, www.readingsoft.com. is how to check your reading speed, and it gives you a piece of text. You read that, and then it takes when you read it, it then asks you some questions. The remarkable thing that actually happens when you do that is your comprehension goes up the faster you read. And you might say, well, why is that? It's one of those funny things. The reason is you're totally focusing on reading fast, which avoids distractions. And the other thing is, when we read fairly slowly, our fingers, we actually read the gaps, which are totally irrelevant. And I talked last week about the 80-20 rule, Pareto's law, which you will remember. 20% of what we do produces 80% of the results. 80% of the words produce 20% of the meaning. So actually most of the words are pretty irrelevant. Very good for business books, very good for newspapers, but not so good for a novel because you might miss the very thing. A couple of people try to come into the meeting and I'm just admitting them to the meeting. Welcome. I had to let the new people in. That's fantastic. So read www.readingsoft.com. I carried out an experiment about 4 years ago and asked some of the people that get my briefing, one of which is Martin Taylor, the ex-chief executive of Barclays. And I knew how fast he read because I presented documents to him in his office on credit papers, and he could read them in, I don't know, 10, 20 seconds, just cutting through all the nonsense. And he came out at 892 words a minute, which was, I don't know how you read at that speed, because if you read at 701 words a minute, it's really, really quick. And I think I might have been slightly cheating there. So that was the two first points that I wanted to raise. The third point I wanted third point, I'll come to you in a minute, Kevin. Third point I wanted to raise was that we need to be patient with people, don't we? Working from home. We're working from home. A pal of mine bought me a fabulous book called Resilience about 10 years ago for Christmas. It is a good book, and we need to be resilient. We need to maybe pause, take a time out before we say anything with our loved ones when we're all working from home. I know some of you work from home like I do, but there's a lot of people out there that don't normally work from home, and we have to be patient. A friend of mine's a lawyer, a guy called Nick Richardson. He runs a law practice in Guildford. He told me on Friday that his property department has no work whatsoever and he's furloughed them, but his divorce department is overworked with instructions over the last 2 weeks. And I said, come on, you're having a laugh, Nick. He said, seriously, Derek, people have been putting in their instructions already. I said, surely not. He said, well, maybe their marriages were on the rocks anyway, but 2 weeks at home and we're absolutely bombed out. Kevin, did you want to say something there? I don't know. You were waving at me or not. Did I get that wrong?
Yeah, I liked your comment about speed reading. When I was in high school, I took the Evelyn Wood speed reading course, and that's what they told us to do with the hand. My daughter-in-law is blind, and she reads Braille at about 250 to 300 words a minute. And if you ever see a Braille reader, they're using both hands. They're previewing what's coming next, and they're reading what's in the left hand. So they're using both hands as they go along.
Wow. Wow.
And I remember when you and I were with Nito Cobain, one of the things he does is he we tell our students to do this, before you start reading, preview the technical material. What are the section heads for this chapter? What are they probably trying to teach us? Then go in and read it. So you've already gotten a preview, you see where the summary is, and then you can go a little faster. Thanks for that tip, though. That was a good reminder to me.
Fantastic, Kevin. Kevin's a friend of mine that I met when I went to High Point University in North Carolina for 4 mentoring weekends with Nito Cobain, the president there. Kevin's in Chicago, and Kevin's written several books. So thanks for that, Kevin. Now we turn to the first interview of the day, and that's with a friend of mine that I've played hockey with. I played lots of sport with, Godfrey Lancashire, and Godfrey set up his own private detective agency around 25 years ago, and also turned it into a franchise. So policemen who had taken early retirement went on Godfrey's courses. Godfrey franchised how to do it with his friend and colleague Brian, who's a terrific guy, and it was very successful. And Godfrey retired from that 2-3 years ago, but still does some private work. Godfrey has advised the government on fraud and was president of the Fraud Institute or something like that. So Godfrey, welcome, and thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I'm just going to pin you on the video, which is what I was doing there. And Godfrey, I remember you told me once a fantastic story, and in fact, I almost didn't believe you. And I don't know if you remember this, where you were given an instruction by a client, a man, to follow his wife. And you can guess what I thought was going to happen, but perhaps you'd share the story with the viewers. Godfrey, I don't think your sound's on. Oh, that's probably my fault.
Kevin a while ago.
Okay, start again, Godfrey. I hadn't unmuted you. The audio visual department's not working very well here.
Well, this is the friend I remember from so many years ago. Yeah, Derek, thanks for inviting me on, and to everybody, hello, and lovely to meet some old friends, and also talk to some new people, and hopefully be friends as well. So Derek, yeah, I'd forgotten that one, but actually I think the story that you are reminded about, we did a lot of corporate work. We had all the surveillance techniques, all the technology. We had people from special branch. We had all sorts of clever people, and most of our work was corporate. But one day I got a phone call from the MD of a corporate client. He said, Godfrey, I'm terribly worried about my wife. She's acting out of character. whispered phone calls. Sometimes the phone goes, she takes it in another room. She's been going out, telling me she's having a drink with a girlfriend, coming in late, just really worried. Can you find out what's going on? The first thing I said was, of course, we've got the skills, we can do this. But the first question is, if we do find out what's going on, do you really want me to tell you the truth? And that made him think, actually. But he said, yes, I want you to go ahead. So I said, okay, the best thing to do is send me a photograph. I want her car registration, make and model, and maybe if she gives you a bit of notice that she's going out one night, you can phone me, and we'll be at the bottom of the road and we'll just follow her. We'll do some simple old-fashioned stuff. We'll just see what happens. So my partner and I, we got a phone call in the office a couple of days later. Yes, my wife's going out tonight, allegedly with a girlfriend, and she's leaving the house about 7 o'clock. So we were at the end of the road and we followed her. Very simple thing for us to do. 20 minutes drive into the lovely countryside. I remember exactly where it was, in Oxfordshire, and it was a lovely country pub. She pulled into the car park and so did we. Couple of moments later, another car pulled in. She got out and this very good-looking chap, about the same age, got out. They clearly knew each other, a kiss, an arm around each other, and into the pub they went. So we went in about 5 minutes later, got ourselves a drink at the bar, and the body language of this couple was very intimate. They were heads close together, whispered, quite animated, laughing, smiling, and we managed to get a table pretty close by, and we listened to the conversation. So that evening, we knew what the answer to this was, but I waited till the next morning when I thought the MD would be on his own, and I phoned him up and I said, yeah, we know what's been going on, and I told him about listening to his wife and this chap in animated conversation, looking very intimate, and I said, do you really want me to tell you what we've discovered? He said, I'm not sure, but yes, please tell me. So I said, we are going to spoil things for you. He said, please tell me, please tell me. So he said, okay, well, we discovered that your wife has been going out with your best friend for 2 or 3 evenings and having good conversations, but actually what they're doing is planning your surprise 40th birthday party. And so it's your problem now how you play it. And that was the story, but it taught us some pretty good learning points and some good questions. But I think that's what you were remembering.
It was. And yeah, now the next question for you is, did he pay the bill?
Oh yes, yeah, he was a good yeah. He was a good client, yeah, sure.
Okay, because one of the things that people sometimes get caught out in is they don't get paid up front for that sort of work. And a couple of times I've done seminars for people and we've had a real argument about paying, which is why I try and get paid up front, but you can't always get paid up front. It's a bit tricky and you have to take a chance on that. So I guess there's a few learning points from there. What were the learning points for you, Godfrey?
Well, the first one is if you're in the investigation business, it's the #1 golden rule, which is never assume. And we use that phrase, never assume, in many ways in our lives, but that is absolutely crucial. So until you go and check the facts, you never know what you're going to find. And clearly, he was very suspicious it was going to be one answer. The outcome was, luckily for him, a bit different, but never assume is the first one. And the other one actually is from that particular story, with all the fantastic technology that we've got these days, with all the websites we can look up, with all the information that's being chucked at us, sometimes it is just worth stopping and using our eyes and our ears. And there's nothing quite like going out, listening and watching, and you will find out an awful lot more by doing that.
Yeah, big learning point there on assuming. That's one of the first things I tell people on negotiation skills. Never assume the other person's coming from the same direction as you. Never assume their agenda is the same as yours, and never assume they want what you want. And I think it was Dale Carnegie who was the first person that ever wrote about that in How to Win Friends and Influence People, about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And one of the physical things you can do, and I've got Gabrielle Gachet coming back on Wednesday to answer some more neuro-linguistic questions, is to get up from your chair, sit in a different chair, and imagine that is the other person that you're negotiating with or selling to or whatever, and say, now I'm sitting in their chair, where do we think they're coming from? And the final thing I wanted to say on that is one of the first things I do and teach people to do before you meet someone for the first time or you go to a meeting, look up their LinkedIn profile, because you've got a picture of them. And Sam Rathling, who did a podcast for me only 3 weeks ago and is on the Negotiators podcast, said that 58% of people have made their minds up about you before they meet you, because they've looked at your social media, and that's quite a scary thing. And they've assumed things about you just from what you had on LinkedIn. And there's some pretty crazy things people have got on LinkedIn. And if they've got nothing on LinkedIn, that is also an issue. Godfrey, thank you so much for that. Will you stay with us and answer some questions in the end? I've got, there's some people already putting some comments in the chat box. So if you've got
pleasure, thank you.
Put it in the chat box, and I'll unmute everybody at the end. Brilliant, thanks very much. And maybe you'll come back and tell us one or two other interesting stories, if you're allowed to, by the by whoever.
Yeah, all anonymous, it's fine, and it would be a pleasure.
No, you can tell us the names, you can trust us, don't worry about that. I used to play a lot of hockey, and I was pretty good at hockey till I got a rather bad injury, and I spent the next few months trying to find a really good physio, because people used to tell me to take, the doctor said take Valium and it will get better. Other physios will put you on a machine and leave you in the room while they served 2 or 3 other clients, until I met Alison Grose, who's been my physio for longer than I care to remember, and has been sorting my back out and my neck for a long time. And Alison is joining us today, and I'm just going to find Alison on the on here. Alison is a chartered physiotherapist, worked in the National Health Service to start off with, and then started up her own sports physiotherapy practice. Alison has treated many top sports stars in her time, including me, although I didn't quite make that top sports star. I'm going to unmute you, Alison, I think, or you are unmuted, and can I welcome you to the to this live chat show, but also ask you what the most common complaints are, and what are the issues for people working from home, looking at their computer too much, and I think they're probably all postural. So Alison, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Here. So the question was, what's the most common problem? I guess people working from home, the most common problem is neck, because everybody is sitting, I'm going to go sideways, everybody's sitting in front of their PC like this. Can you see that? And that's not very good for all your postural muscles and things through here. So if you're doing that, probably on a chair that might not be as good as the one you have in the office for hours a day, you're going to end up with some problems. So I guess neck problems are the worst thing at the moment for people. Not so much sport going on just now, because nobody's allowed to go out really. So it's all necks. And we're treating those people with virtual appointments, talking to them and giving them advice and things, which is a new world for us. But hey, it's great to try something different. So yeah, watch your posture. I can give you a few more tips if you like.
Definitely, yes, please.
Okay.
I know that you always criticise me for my posture, so you.
Well, if you just sit the way you normally do, then everybody will see how not to do it, won't they?
Like that.
Are you going to be the model? Okay, so Derek, go sideways for me, please. That's great. Lovely. Now just tuck your chin into your chest and put your head back a bit. No, I tell you what, I think maybe I'll demonstrate. You just watch. Is that okay?
Okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough model for you.
You are, but you're just in the wrong place at the moment. Okay, so the biggest thing to remember is we're all going to overuse these muscles up here. They attach onto our shoulder blades, into our skull, and when they get tight, till we've got our neck stuck out like a tortoise, we're eventually going to get neck pain and headache. So if we just think to draw our shoulder blades back and down a bit, it makes the world of difference. It balances your head on your neck, and it takes away the tension from those upper trapezius muscles. So my biggest tip, I guess, is to actually get those shoulder blades back and down, number one. Number two, you need to move. You know, when you're busy working and you get concentrating on something, you forget to move. So make yourself, set a timer on your phone or the PC, wherever, and get yourself up and move, walk around the chair, make a cup of tea, but move every 30 minutes. That's the maximum you should sit without moving. Tip number three, take some deep breaths. We all, when we're sitting crouched, our lungs are compressed and we're not really expanding. So what you need to do is to actually take a minute or two just to breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just allow your lungs to expand, get some more oxygen, stop you from feeling sleepy, and you will feel a lot better. So basically, three top tips for working from home. Get your shoulders in a good position so that your neck is nice and you don't get the neck pain. Move more often, maybe every 30 minutes. Take some deep breaths. Oh, and actually tip 4, make sure you keep hydrated because that helps too with your concentration levels. I could go on, but then you don't want to have hundreds of tips. Well done, Derek. Demonstration.
Alison, what's this new phenomenon called text neck?
Text neck. Well, that's where, here I have my phone for a demonstration. That's where you're sitting like this, again sideways, with your head looking down at your phone, and all the strain is up here through the neck. So if you spend a lot of time in the day doing that, you're going to end up with neck ache, just as I've described. So it's not really a new phenomenon, it's just it's caused by looking at your phone as opposed to slouching at your computer.
And any exercises we can do for that? Is this the sort of thing I should be doing?
Yeah, but not that speed, you know this. Sorry.
Slowly.
So yeah, so very simply, just take your head over to one side, make sure you're in a nice straight line, take a breath in, breathe out, come back up, and the same to the other side. Down to the side, take a breath in, come back up. So you can do that to either side, also rotating. I won't do the breathing, but you can do it with the breath. And actually a really good one, because we are slouching, is to get your hands on your ears and just push your elbows back. And that actually gives a nice stretch down through the shoulder blades, because I'm guessing a lot of you, if you're sitting at the computer and working from home a lot, just hold it for a few seconds, Derek. That's it. And let go. So rotations, side flexions, and then the stretches. That's, I mean, obviously you can do lots of other things, but just doing those will help you. And again, that will help you with the oxygen levels and the concentration levels too, and help you not be so uncomfortable.
That's absolutely fantastic, Alison. Alison's based in Woking, very close to Woking Station. If anyone needs a Hillview physio and sports injury clinic, and I'm a regular customer. I worked out how much I'd probably paid you over the last.
Don't tell them.
25 years. I can see why you live in a nice house now.
Thanks.
What I'm going to do now is to look down the chat box and see what questions we've got there. Kevin asks Godfrey, what's your greatest challenge and what are some tips when you decided to franchise? And for Alison, what kind of chair should you use at home? So Alison, do you want to take that question first as you're unmuted, and then I'll take it from Godfrey. So what kind of chair?
Okay, so the best chair is an office chair. You really need a little slope so that your hips are higher than your knees. Obviously, if you don't have that at home, you might want to put a cushion on your chair so that you are just slightly tilted. You shouldn't have your knees higher than your hips. It just puts you back in a really bad position. So the best tip is knees a bit lower. Just a basic office chair. You don't need anything fancy. At the moment, I'm sitting on a stool, actually, because it makes me sit up straight. I have to sit properly. I guess I don't, but I am sitting properly. But something that gives you a little support in the lower back and keeps your knees lower than your hips. That's the best answer for that one.
Fantastic. Thanks for those tips, Alison. And perhaps you come back and check our posture in a couple of weeks' time and see how we're getting on with these.
Thank you.
Tips. That's brilliant. From Kevin O'Connor, he says, Alison, I hope you get Derek's money in advance. Thanks for that, Kevin.
So I've got some quite strong thumbs, Kevin. We're okay.
So got over to Godfrey. What was your tips when you decided to franchise?
Yeah, well, so moving on to the franchise question. First of all, you need a good model that it works for you. So when we started in the Milton Keynes part of United Kingdom, and we had to make sure that what we were wanting to do worked. So we did that for a while, and then we made a fatal mistake because we wanted to expand throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. And we thought, Derek mentioned, that all the best franchisees would be ex-police because they'd be the best detectives. Actually, we were completely wrong. And it wasn't that at all. And that's back to never assume. Because the police, although we used a lot and there were some really great guys with good skills, a lot of them coming out at the age of 50, they've done 30 years and they've been pre-programmed to do what they're told to do. And that's follow a script. And also, of course, they could hide behind a warrant card and demand that you answered their question, or they would take you down to the police station to take a statement. In the private sector, of course, you don't have a warrant card and you're only as good as a member of Joe Public. So we had to be a bit more imaginative. And so we quickly discovered that when we were recruiting, we needed to change our interview techniques to discover the real personal skills that we wanted, which were all the people skills and imaginative skills, rather than they had to have been a policeman, they had to have been in the military. So we learned big lessons then. And then finally, I can go on, but finally, the thing right at the beginning was we needed to have an excellent training course and operating manual so that you could be confident that what you were doing in your head office area was going to be replicated around the country without spoiling your reputation. So we devised a fortnight's residential course with full operating manual, and we made sure that we would go out with these guys, and we used to have competitions that we used to have real life cases and set them on the case, and we would do it as well. And we always wanted to be better than our potential franchisees. And that was how we started, and it developed, and in the end we had 44 offices around the UK, but we made lots of mistakes. The trick is to learn from them and be flexible enough to change.
Fantastic, thanks Godfrey. There's no more questions in the chat box, so I'm going to bring this to a close and stop the recording. But as on all these, once we've stopped the recording, I'll leave it open for any questions for as long as anyone wants to stay on or share any stories. So thanks for joining me. The next live chat show is at 12:30 on Wednesday, 12:30 UK time. So Kevin in Chicago might have to get up a bit early, but we've got Gabrielle Gachet coming back once again, and she's going to talk about the psychology of triggers and anchors, which of course, as we know, work in sport all the time. They work in business. They also work how you manage yourself, particularly through the issues that we're all going through. So thanks very much for joining us. Godfrey, you can get hold of Godfrey at Godfrey Lancashire on LinkedIn, and you can get hold of Alison Grose on the Hillview Physio website, and you can Google that and find it. So Godfrey and Alison, thanks so much for joining us, and talk and see you next Wednesday.